Friday night and you got some dough, won't you head on down where the cool cats go? Get a fish enchilada and a mouse souffle at the
Two Cat Kitchen. It's time for us to pitch in and start another Two Cat show. Down at the Two Cat Kitchen, we're starting on a mission to put you in the culinary know. We've got the finest recipes you ever will find, guaranteed to show you all a mighty fine time here at the Two Cat Kitchen. Time for a new edition of the Culinary Two Cat Show. The Culinary Two Cat Show.
Welcome to the Two Cat Kitchen, the show that mixes musical mayhem with culinary calamity. Sarah Grady is here to help with the mixing.
I'm here with my spoon.
Each episode features new songs, a brand new recipe, and a special musical guest. Who's our guest today?
Today we have singer-songwriter George Ajjan from the Ajjancy. George will tell us about his approach to songwriting, and he has some great insights into the challenges faced by independent musicians trying to get their music out there.
Hey, any news from the Coconuts lately?
They are taking some much-needed vacation time.
Again?
Well, they have accrued quite a lot.
Okay, gotta give them credit for that. But now we're gonna start things off with a song. It's Magdalulu by the Ajjancy, featuring today's guest right here on the Two Cat Kitchen. We're back at the Two Cat Kitchen, and we're here with our musical guest for this episode. It's George Ajjan from the Ajjancy. George, welcome to the Two Cat Kitchen. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about that song.
Well, that song is one that I really enjoy. It's a fun one. It's got a bit of a funky feel to it. It's a bit of a yacht rock kind of an arrangement, which I like. It's very timely for people of our generation. And that song actually started out as a little thing I would play on the acoustic guitar, which was dedicated to my niece. And the song was just about this. It was kind of this folky little song about this little girl who was so cute, and you know how chubby her cheeks are and all that kind of stuff. And I thought back to a friend of mine from college who later became a pediatrician, and she had said, when you meet young girls, when you meet little girls, don't remark on how they look, because you're just reinforcing these stereotypes and programming into their head that their value is based on how pretty they are, how cute they are, or whatever. And so I always had that back in my head, and whenever I would meet little girls, I would try to do that and remark on how brave they were, how smart they were, or how curious they were, or how athletic they were, or talented they were, or whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, rather than, and this particular niece is also somebody who's quite, has a good, strong personality. She has a bit of a mad scientist, experimental side to her. And so I thought, okay, rather than turn this song into a cute little baby girl with chubby cheeks or whatever, make it into a girl who breaks all the molds of society, breaks out of the role that she was given, and decides to become a superhero. So the song is basically about girl power, if you like.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a great approach. Yeah. Definitely good advice there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, the musically it changed because, as I said, originally it was just an acoustic guitar and it was this folky little thing. And then I when I first started working on it, I put it into, I think it was GarageBand at the time, and I just found this loop, this kind of funky bass loop, doon 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 doon. And so that became the foundation of it. And then when I was in the studio with some session pros who worked on it, we basically built that into that loop into something that was, you know, musically a bit more valid. And I mean, the keyboard work on there, the keyboard player, Matt Lebowski, that solo he plays, that Wurlitzer solo is just blistering, smoking hot. So really, man, the guitar work by Fernando Perdomo at the end, it's really good. It has that kind of a Steely Dan feel to it. And I'm really proud of the track. I really like it.
Yeah, it's a great song. So, George, let us know, fill us in. What have you been up to lately, musically speaking? I know you've been doing some recording.
Yeah, you know, I'm in the phase right now. It's funny, I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm an independent person. I don't have a label behind me. This is all something this is like living out a dream of mine that I've always wanted to make my own music and record my own music. And thinking about that growing up, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s, at which time the idea was, you know, you're going to be a rock star and you're going to sell out stadiums and play rock music to millions of adoring fans. And the reality is that that's not the way the industry is now. And that's not the way it functions. And the role of the big record company to turn somebody from a nobody into a superstar isn't really the way that it used to be. There are some exceptions, the Taylor Swifts of the world, et cetera. But generally speaking, that model has changed a lot, and for better or worse. And one of the better parts about it is that independent people like myself can go into a studio and create music, not like it was in the past where you would need, I always grew up with the idea that thinking you would need at least $250,000 to make a good record. And through the process and my own learning of launching myself as a singer-songwriter and putting myself out there, you find that it's a fraction of that. It's really to make a really good album with professional musicians in a good studio, well mixed and mastered and everything. You're in the very low five figures, actually. So it's something that's not something you're going to do every month or even every year, but it's something that, you know, even a quote unquote regular person with a normal job can squirrel away enough money to be able to do something musically that he or she would be really proud to present to the world. And so I spent a lot of time over the past 3 years in studios working on the music. And now I'm at the point in the cycle where I'm actually starting to release some of the material, putting it out there. And now I'm spending my time figuring out how to market all this independently, which is whole other learning curve. So this whole process of being a modern singer-songwriter working independently in a post-big record company world is really a huge learning curve. on multiple fronts. You have to learn the ins and outs of lots of different facets of the industry, and hopefully you can master them to the point where people will hear your music and you can generate a following.
Yeah, that's really interesting because like you mentioned, in a way, the kind of the demise of the big studio, not that they're not still there, but just has really opened up avenues for small for many songwriters and singers and performers, and which is great. And
the mere fact that we're having this discussion, I mean, this is the analog of a rock star being interviewed on a big city radio station, rock radio station back in the 80s or 90s. I mean, the fact that you guys having an independent podcast, me being an independent singer-songwriter, can even be having this discussion, and that somebody out there, whoever you are, listeners, will say, hey, I learned something from that, or that, that taught me something, or that turned me on to some music, or I had a good laugh, or I enjoyed the stories that they told. That wouldn't have been possible if the industry hadn't changed. So as much as people like to bitch, it's so unfair, and the algorithm and nobody's hearing my stuff, and my feed isn't getting anywhere. And fine, it's not easy, but I think on balance, it's better than it used to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And just opening up the avenues. I mean,
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, and you're in the middle of the process of trying to get your music out there. And you mentioned, and we've kind of been going through the same thing, both Sarah and I think, not to the extent maybe that you have, but, I personally have found that just going through that process, like, for example, putting together this podcast, and we record songs, not in a really dramatic way, but kind of in a low key way. It's just really, really rewarding for me. I've found that just the process to be rewarding, not worrying that much about who's listening to it or how many people.
You hit the nail right on the head, and this is one of my mantras, which is people say, who are you doing this for? Who did you write that song for? It's like, I'm not a 17-year-old kid with a crush on a girl who wrote the song for her. I'm writing everything that I'm doing ultimately is for me, because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel satisfied. It makes me feel that I'm leaving something behind. It makes me feel alive. It's all of those things. And if anyone else hears it and says, wow, that really touched me, or that made me feel good, or whatever, that's an added bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's to your point, even doing the podcast, even if you have one monthly listener and the listener is like your brother or your mom or your kid or whatever, it doesn't matter. If it's fun for you to do it, then it's worth doing.
I think something that is also really interesting is that the shift from album-based recording and album-based promotion to really kind of the streaming model means that you can release, one song or two songs, and you don't have to wait till everything is compiled and tracked and all of that.
Right. Right.
So it kind of allows this sort of constant trickle, which actually might be in some ways better for maintaining listenership.
It is. And in fact, the gurus that I listen to try to make sense out of all this will tell you that what you call the trickle, I mean, in the industry now, they refer to this as the waterfall strategy, which is to say, yes, I still think in terms of albums because that's my musical upbringing. So I have a concept of an album that has 10 or 11 songs on it that I think are grouped together in terms of when I wrote them or how they fit together or whatever that happens to be. But to your point, Sarah, you don't just say, okay, here's my album, and then you disappear for 2 years. What you do is say, okay, of the 10 or 11 songs that I have, here are 5 or 6 that I want to release as singles. And guess what? It doesn't cost any money to make it a single because you don't need the record company promoting it or whatever. You don't need to pay for packaging and all that stuff. You just have to say, okay, here are, let's say, 5 or 6 singles that are going to come out. And you release each one 5 or 6 weeks apart, or let's say 6 to 8 weeks apart, depending on how you can do it any way you want. And within those 6 weeks, and this is what I'm doing, Rick, to your original question, what I'm doing now is trying to figure out a way to talk about the single in some context through content that you create every single day during those 6 weeks, let's say. I'm using like a 6-week window. So if you do the math, if you have six singles and every 6 weeks, that's 36 weeks. So, with after 3/4 of a year, basically, you've then put out all the singles for the album, and then you can release the rest of the so-called album tracks after that. And then because, Sarah, to your point, because it's streaming and you can just recompile them, there's no physical medium. It's all digital. You can repackage all of those singles into an album afterward. And then the people who have hopefully become your fans by learning about you and getting interested in the hooks of your songs over those 9 months or that year or however long you decided it would be, will then say, oh, well, now there's a whole album. There's 5 other tracks that are album tracks. And then there's the whole YouTube page. And then then the fan can go and delve deeper into who you are and what you're all about as an artist. So again, that to me is exciting because it opens up possibilities. There's flexibility. And it's also for those who don't have infinite budgets, exactly as you said, fine, I can work on a batch of 3 songs and that will get me through the next 4 months. And that gives me 4 months to finish the vocals or finish the mixing on the next 3 tracks or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think Sarah, I don't know if we actually formally talked about this, but when we started the podcast, the idea in my mind, one of the ideas was to try to have a vehicle for getting our original music out there, and we were going to do 1 original song per podcast, and then feature our guest songs and everything. And we've pretty much been doing that. Maybe not every episode, and we're in the 20s on our episodes now. So we've got all these original songs, and we never took it to the next step. We never really started thinking about.
But you know what, Rick? There's only we're only okay. You guys are a band. Let's say you have more bodies to function with, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and we're not 18-year-old kids who are sleeping in the van and living and breathing music all day long. I mean, so you've got your regular life, and then you have a certain number of time that you can devote to your pursuits like music, your artistic or your creative side. And even that, there's a few hours in a day. What are you going to spend the time doing? You're going to spend the time rehearsing. You're going to spend the time writing. You're going to spend the time doing podcasts. You're going to spend the time making thumbnails for YouTube videos. I mean, all of this stuff, you got to be a graphic designer and an audio editor and a songwriter and a performer and a comedian and everything else. I mean, it's a lot. And you have to say, okay, who am I? Rick, George, Sarah, who are we? And what are we good at? And where's our time best spent? And make the best of it, because nobody can do everything well all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of what we do is actually pretty asynchronous. Because we'll think of what we want to do together, and Rick will go off and do things like lay down some sort of tracking background. And then we have a scheduled time that we get together, and I come by and I do the vocals and maybe some of the podcast voiceover stuff.
Right.
But I mean, we are only in the same place working quote unquote together for maybe a few hours a month.
Right.
Yeah, and the same thing happens with the other members of our house band. We all get together like in groups of 2. So, but it seems to work. So, that's really, I mean, coming back to, what I've been doing and how I got into all of this, it was really something I had dreamed of doing for many, many years. Like I said, thinking, if one day I'm rich and famous, I'm sitting on a pile of money, I'll be able to go into the studio. And then what happened was when the pandemic hit in 2020, suddenly everyone was at home and, instrument sales went through the roof, and everybody said, I always wanted to learn the guitar or learn the piano or whatever. And what I also realized at the time was that all the best musicians in the world were also stuck at home. And with platforms like Fiverr or SoundBetter, you have access to incredibly skilled and experienced studio pros who are very affordable, including people who played on Grammy-winning records for like your dream artists, your favorite artists. You have access to some of those people for not huge sums of money. And so that's what encouraged me to say, wait a second, I can actually do this. And to your point, Sarah, a lot of it's remote. I mean, I'm not flying to sit with these people. It's just saying, okay, hey guys, here's the demo and here's the chart. I need you to lay down, the basic drum track, or I need guitar solos on these parts of the song, or guitar parts here, or I need a keyboard vamp on this section of the song. And you work it out with people, and you send back and forth wave files, and then you compile it all afterwards. So this asynchronous way of working, I think, is largely the norm.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil too much. It's a bit of a peek behind the curtain for the listeners. I don't know if you want to edit this out eventually, Rick, but the cocoa notes are not always in the same room, just off of the main recording studio.
Oh, that would be a real heartbreaker for our listeners, I'm sure.
Well, it's when I got into this, I thought the first time I went into a studio, because I had worked with, as I said, worked with some musicians remotely through Fiverr and Sound Better, etc. And then I talked to actually an old high school friend who was a professional bass player and runs a studio out in the Bay Area, and spoke to him and sent him some of the stuff I was working on. And he said, look, for the quality of music and sound quality that you're getting for the money you're paying, is the ratio is much higher than I would have expected. However, if you want to take it to another level, come out here and I'll bring you into a studio and I'll play bass and I'll get you a drummer, and we'll track the rhythm section together, and it will be on another level for not a lot more money. And so that's ultimately what I decided to do. And of course, then took those backing tracks and went to another studio with a guitarist named Fernando Perdomo, based in LA. And he became like my go-to guy for the guitar. So then we took, all these guys work on Pro Tools. So they, Dan just gave me a USB key with the Pro Tools sessions, went down to Fernando. He plugged it into his Pro Tools, loaded it up, and then he tracked all the guitars on there. And then the same thing, keyboard overdubs or whatever. And then you send it to the mixing engineer. And so all these files just get built up upon as you go along. And then finally got on the third time I went into the studio, because I did about once per year. Then I brought everybody together. So I had my band in the studio, just bass, drums, guitar, and keyboard, and me kind of directing the thing. And that was really a dream come true, because that's what you always looked up to, the band, being the band in the studio. But what you find is that it's not quite the glamorous experience that you thought it would be, because again, I didn't bring 4 20-year-old kids who sleep 2 hours a day and play music the other 22 hours of the day. I brought 4 people who are middle-aged, Gen Xers, who have their regular lives, and it just happens to be that their job is being a studio musician. And so they come into the studio and say, okay, what do we have to do today? Let's work for the 8 or 10 hours of the day, and then I got to go home to the rest of my life, to my kids and cooking dinner and mowing the lawn or doing whatever it is that I do. And so the idea that you're going to be the boys in the band and you're just going to be spending a week working out the songs and, sharing in the glory and the drama of all that, not really how it works.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
I come from having done a lot of a cappella, and
okay.
There is definitely something to being, especially with something like a cappella, there's something about being in the same room and being able to make eye contact with other people and kind of, nods and little signals to each other. But on the other hand, my a cappella groups recorded some albums over some various years, and we were actually not in the same room for that either. So.
Right. Well, Sarah, you bring up a touchy subject now, which is the whole issue. It's particularly relevant for a cappella. The whole issue of pitch correction and falsely presenting very processed videos as live performances. And this is kind of a plague on the whole a cappella scene right now, because people are doing these bathroom amazing, 4-part harmonies that are completely perfectly in tune, where they're not really. They just lip synced it and they recorded it to sound like they were in a kitchen or a bathroom, and then went back and doctored it after the fact, but didn't tell anybody that. And so, then you have guys going with the pitch correction software and saying, this is a flat line here. Like, this is basically turning the voice into a keyboard, where you're completely, it's a 12-tone system, and that's the key that you're pressing. And that's not really how human beings sing. And so that, I think for all artists, we have to look at, okay, what does technology enable us to do? And where do we personally draw the line of what we think we don't want to interfere with the human experience of creating music?
Yeah, I listened to a really fantastic podcast plug for this podcast called 20,000 Hertz. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of it is about how how sound gets made. And actually, you know what? I just realized I will plug 20,000 Hertz, but I realized I actually heard this on a different podcast called Switched on Pop. They're both good podcasts. But on Switched on Pop, they had a recent episode about AI music and how you can tell that a song was made by AI, and it's gotten now to the point where it is actually very difficult to tell. Yeah. Which is kind of unnerving to say the least.
You know, I have the contrarian view on that. I don't consider that a worry at all, simply because ultimately all of AI, whether it's in music, whether it's in any field, it's ultimately limited by human biology. I mean, we're still human beings, and we have to process all of this stuff that's created, whether it's book reports for kids in school or songs or whatever. So we'll reach the point where a computer with a click of a button can create 1 billion songs in a minute that are completely unable to be distinguished from real musicians creating the songs. But then so what? I mean, that just means that they're there. But human beings ultimately have to consume the song and decide if they're good or not, if the song is worth repeating or worth listening to. So who is going to curate all of that and decide what songs are worthwhile? The computer can't do that. Humans have to spend 3 minutes to listen to a song to decide if the melody sticks in their head or if they like the hook or whatever it happens to be. So I think that human side of it can't be replaced.
Yeah, and the other side of that too is that, like we talked about, the creating the music for us as musicians is the incredibly rewarding part too. And if you have AI doing that, then where's the reward for humans?
But this is where I would go back, and I would agree with what Sarah would say, which is disconcerting, because if the music is so formulaic, and I would argue that a lot of, for example, the kind of the country pop coming out of Nashville, a lot of it's very formulaic, even though they're very skilled players and very good technicians working on all that stuff. But sooner or later, the computer is going to master that formula and that production style. And so then the point is there's lots of people who listen to that and enjoy it. And so if we reach that point, then for those people, it doesn't matter. But there will always be a certain kind of music listener who wants to connect with something on a deeper level, who wants to be surprised in the music. And the AI cannot handle the surprise element because it's not going to know. It can just give you a million permutations of, okay, now I'm going to take a reggae song and I'm going to mix in Norwegian death metal. Like if I was a human being who had experience traveling in Norway and I fell in love with Norwegian death metal and I happened to be a reggae artist, I could combine those two things because it had some meaning to me personally. But the computer doesn't have any experience. The computer just knows, well, there's 10,000 different subcultures of music around the world. So I'm just going to 10,000 factorial. That's how many possibilities there are combining all of these things. Again, you have almost an infinite, for practical purposes, you have an infinite number of combinations of things that don't have any meaning. They're just the computer deciding to randomly jumble two things together to surprise the listener. So humans have to have a way of deciding and adjudicating these two things are unique and interesting together, and it means something to me, and therefore it will mean something to somebody else.
Yeah, that's one of the that's funny you mentioned the country pop, because those were most of the examples that were provided of the AI music. But the other thing is that you're really supporting out Rick and my effort to do kind of, I don't want to say strangely styled, but differently styled cover versions of songs.
Absolutely. I'm a covers artist as well.
It's 70s pop and reggae
version. Yes, absolutely. Bless you for doing that. I mean, look, three of the tracks on my on the album that I'm rolling out right now, that, as I said, the waterfall strategy. So, by the end of the year, it will all be packaged together. But 3 of those tracks are covers. One of them is Michael Belton's hit from, was 1991, How Am I Supposed to Live Without You? But it's done like as a heavy rock song, okay?
Awesome.
The other one is More Than Words, again from Extreme 1990, but done on the piano in a much darker way than the original. So I'm a huge fan of what you guys do, and I'm a huge fan of covers artists who bend the rules. And yeah, that's that's not something that a computer can replace, because it's your personal view saying, I think this would be cool and I'm going to do it. The computer doesn't have a sense of what's cool or not. The computer just say, oh, I'll do a bluegrass version of it, a metal version of it, a reggae version. I mean, the computer doesn't know. It just knows, well, these are all the different options. I'll just randomly combine them all together. That doesn't have any meaning to anybody.
I think we need T-shirts that say computers don't know what's cool.
No, they don't. They don't. The only algorithms can only. I mean, algorithms are basically learning human behavior, but there's tastes change. If humans' taste was a function always of what had come before and learning what came before, we would have no style. We would have had no innovation. Humans are innovative. I mean, even we know this as musicians being in the studio. The happy accidents that happen. Oh, wait, hold on. I played that chord the wrong way, but wait a second. That sounded really cool. What did you do there? Oh, wait a second, Rick, you missed a beat there. So now suddenly the song's in 7/8 instead of in 4/4. Wait a second. That's really cool. Let's try that again. It's the happy accidents that make things wonderful and beautiful and special. And again, the computer can plan out the happy accidents, but then there's there's infinite number of iterations of that, and it doesn't have any meaning.
Totally agree with you. And actually, on that note, we're gonna take a quick break here in the Two Cat Kitchen, and we'll be right back. George, you have another song for us?
Yeah, I sure do. This one, it's a bit different because it started out as an instrumental piano piece that I had written, and the song is short; it's maybe 90 seconds long. It started as an instrumental piano piece, and then a close friend of mine, who is a French speaker, and introduced me. And I'm also a French speaker. I took French in school, and somehow it stuck with me. And the work that I do outside of music that pays for all of this music hobby is international nature. So I spend a lot of time in French-speaking countries in Africa. So I have been obliged to keep up with the French that I learned in school. So for those, like my kids or anybody else who thinks, oh, learning foreign languages is such a waste, but sometimes it's not. It ends up being something that you use in your life. And so that's been something that I've been interested to keep up with, and it's been very useful to me, and it's a passion of mine. And so this friend, we communicate together in French, and she turned me on to this, a 19th century French poet named Charles Baudelaire. And Baudelaire, he wrote a lot of pretty deep and some dark poetry. But this one in particular, it's called Enivrer-vous, which means get yourselves drunk or get yourselves intoxicated. And basically he's saying, you owe it to yourself to live life to the fullest. Get drunk, not just on wine, but on poetry and on love and on all the great things of life. And if you're ever wondering, you find that you wake up one day and you're no longer intoxicated by the world. Ask the birds and the trees and the stars and the sea and whatever. Ask anything that moves or crawls or speaks or sings. Ask it what time it is, and they'll tell you it's time to get intoxicated. And it's really, really lovely. So what I did there was I hired a guy I found who is a voiceover artist, French voiceover artist, but there's a French slam poet by the name of Grand Corps Malade. And he's become quite famous doing this kind of spoken word poetry in songs. And so obviously I was not going to hire him, but I hired somebody to do basically an imitation of him. And so that guy it's not my voiceover, it's this French, very deep voice, kind of French slam poet type voiceover, reading the words of this famous Charles Baudelaire poem. And with my piano piece in the background, it just happened to fit the way that it goes from a major key to a minor key or a minor key to a major key and back and forth there with the way that the flow of the drama of the text moves. So It's not really a pop song like the other ones that the first one that we heard or the one we'll hear after this, but it's also very much in my style. This one was written on the piano, and I thought, this isn't going to be a sung melody. This is just a piano piece that has some spoken poetry over it.
Wow, it sounds super interesting. Let's check it out.
Il faut être toujours ivre. Tout est là, c'est l'unique question. Pour ne pas sentir l'horrible fardeau du temps qui brise vos épaules et vous penche vers la terre, il faut vous enivrer sans trêve. Mais de quoi? De vin, de poésie ou de vertu, à votre guise. Mais enivrez-vous. De vin, de musique ou d'amour, à votre guise. Mais enivrez-vous. Et si vous vous réveillez, l'ivresse déjà diminuée ou disparue, demandez au vent, à la vague, à l'étoile, à l'oiseau, à l'horloge, à tout ce qui fuit, à tout ce qui gémit, à tout ce qui roule, à tout ce qui chante, à tout ce qui parle. Demandez quelle heure il est. Et ils vous répondront, il est l'heure de s'enivrer. Pour ne pas être les esclaves martyrisés du temps, enivrez-vous. Enivrez-vous sans cesse de vin, de poésie, de musique, de vertu ou d'amour, à votre guise. Enivrez-vous.
George, we're going to ask you a question that we ask everybody here in the Two Cat Kitchen. And that question is, what is your earliest musical memory?
Ooh. Well, look, I know what one of my earliest musical exposures was, which is, and they always tell the story that when I was a kid, my grandmother would put on, she had a cassette of Strauss waltzes. And when it was my nap time, she would put on that cassette and I would fall asleep to Strauss waltzes. So that, and I grew up hearing that story as if I remember. Of course, I don't remember that. I was just an infant in the crib or whatever, or even a toddler sitting on the bed, waking up from my nap, waiting for them to come and get me afterwards. But I think that's important because I grew up in New York suburbs in a middle class family, and I took piano lessons as a kid. I eventually took up the saxophone for a few years, and then Sarah, you'll appreciate, I joined the chorale, and so I went through that whole a cappella phase and all of that too. So that was, my musical background was a mixture of things. There was some classical music just through the family that was instilled in me, which stuck. And then, of course, joining we sang a lot of classical material, Mozart and Bach and Beethoven and all of that in high school choirs and even in college. But then growing up, again, Gen Xer, 80s and 90s pop music. So, pop of the 80s, the Michael Jackson, Madonna, pop of the 80s, and then, all the grunge stuff that happened in the 90s when I was a teenager. And my parents were huge fans of the Beatles and also of the oldies. So I grew up in the New York area. We had a station called 101.1 CBS FM, and there was this DJ called Cousin Brucey, who was one of these, big oversized personalities playing those oldies. And so Cousin Brucey was like a member of the family. Anytime we were in the car, it was one CBS FM was on, and Cousin Brucey playing the oldies. And so that kind of the formula of those songs was a big part of my musical background, pop and rock music. And there was fortunately a lot of really, really great stuff. I'm just starting from the Beatles, and then on my own, I went more into the 70s progressive rock. That became kind of my biggest influence. And a lot of that also drew on the classical side of things. So that was an appeal to me. So I'm a guy who has kind of a mixture of pop and rock and classical, and it all kind of swims together in my head, and it comes out in my own way. And so if people ask me my favorite bands, if I tell them, oh, I love Yes and King Crimson, but my music doesn't follow the format of those bands. I'm not making 15 and 20-minute songs because I'm a singer-songwriter. At the end, it's just I'm making songs and I bring in musicians, but we're not a band jamming out and I'm not playing anywhere live. So the songs are much more structured and they're less about jamming and long instrumental passages. They're more just about the form of the song and getting the most out of the melody and the key changes and the reharmonization and whatever that you can do in a song. I enjoy working on all of that. And I think that's kind of just like many people, just a combination of all the different influences that I had.
So some of these, how do you think these early influences that you just talked about have made their way into your music now? Do you think they have consciously made their way in, or is
It's more. It's more than consciously. And that's interesting as an artist because when you make music, and this is part of the challenge of being an independent artist and trying to market your music, is that you have to figure out what genre you belong to, and that's not so easily done because you really have to parse it out and figure out who are current artists making music that resembles your own. And that takes a lot of research, guys. It's like you got to spend time listening to new bands and discovering them and figure out, wow, that sounds like that to me. That sounds like me, because saying, oh, well, I'm influenced by these '70s rock bands and the pop, the kind of the pop of the 1960s and the pop of the '80s. It's like, okay, but that's great, but people who like the Beatles are not looking for me or you. They're just going to go and listen to the music that they've known for decades. They're not looking for new music. People who are going to become fans of yours is because they're people who are passionate about new music and they want to scratch that itch of, I want to find new music that touches me in a certain way or reminds me of a certain thing or fits in a certain genre.
Great. And so I have a question too for you. I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but in your songs, when you're writing songs, I've listened to a few of your songs, and I get an overwhelming positive vibe. I don't know if that's something you're trying to throw out there, or is this something as a natural byproduct of the songs you're writing? But are you thinking that when you're writing your songs? Or
that's a really good question, Rick, because the tagline on my bio is, why do happy people make sad music? And so I think a lot of the songs, like the one I'm promoting right now, is a song called Jude and I, which is dedicated to my younger son. I wrote that when he was about 2 years old. And it's a song about fatherhood. It's a song about, the wonderful thing it is to bring a child into the world and so start watching them grow up. And at the age where they're, I wrote the song when he was about 2 years old. He was old enough to laugh with me and hug me and express closeness to me, but didn't understand if I would talk to him and tell him how much I love him and how much he means to me. And so the song was basically intended to be a time capsule to say, hey, you're 2 years old and here's all the things I think about you. And now he just turned 11. I released the song on his 11th birthday. Now he's old enough to understand all of those feelings. But there's a certain sadness in there as well with some of the musical choices, some of the intervals that you use and the color notes that don't exactly fit in the chord and add a little attention in there. And so that's something I try to do is that, I'm generally a happy, positive person. And I think that will come across. But there's also, life is bittersweet, Rick, right? So I think the music has to reflect that. And so that's something I always try to do. The songs will sound different. Some are more upbeat, some are slower, some are, say, sad, some are more happy. But yeah, overall, yes, you will get a positive vibe. And you'll also get things like, well, this is happy, but there's also something sad in there. And I think that's the angle that I'm most going for. And when people come back with that feedback, that makes me the most happy to hear in terms of how the song affected people or touched people.
Do you feel like that is something intentional or that it's something more intuitive? Like, are you thinking intentionally about how to craft
when you write a song,
or you feel like you just do it and that's you just
for me, songwriting goes in iterations, right? So I'll write either on the piano or the guitar, and I'll start usually with just a chord sequence, and you start that, okay, here's a chord sequence, and it has a certain feel to you. I don't have any particular lyrics in mind in the beginning. And then maybe I'll pass it from the guitar to the piano or vice versa. And then sometimes it changes because of the fingerings on the guitar, or that it's easier to play on the piano in a certain way, or the key on the guitar. You change the key of the song because you want to get those open tunings on the guitar or whatever it happens to be. And then the lyrics come in afterwards based on how I feel about how the music has developed and the melody. And if the melody has a certain emotional quality to it. But that's not something I'm super mindful of at the time. It just kind of happens. It's one of those things when you look back on the song and you think, I don't remember how I came up with that. It's just a blur to me. It's like it just came out of somewhere. I don't remember when and where it was. Like I might remember the time when I first came up with that chord sequence, but I usually go into a black box when it's how it all came together. And then when I look back and say, I don't know where that came from. And I think that's a good thing. So yes, when you come to the end and you're writing the lyrics, say, okay, well, yes, this is something sad or this is something happy. But for example, the song about my son, the first verse is talking about the first two verses really are how great it is to be a dad and all the joy of that. And, you have this creature that you created and, you have a second child and you think, well, but the math doesn't work out because you think, okay, well, I have the love that I have to give is divided by 2, but that's not really how it works. You have as much love to give to the new one as you had to the old one. And it's something that regenerates and grows. And then the chorus is saying, hey, I might not always be there, but I'm even if I'm not with you physically, I'm always there with you in spirit. You can always lean on me. And if I'm away for work, because I travel for my job quite a bit, sooner or later the plane's coming back and I'm going to get off that plane. I'm going to be there to give you a hug and comfort you and carry you and do all the things that a dad should do. And so that there's a bit of melancholy with that. So, like in that case, the chorus is in a minor key. And the verse is in a major key. So, as the song develops, you do work out and you are a bit more deliberate about the musical choices, reflecting the emotional content of the lyrics and also the intent of the song. Because being a parent is not just, hey, I love you, you're my kid, everything's great all the time. It's not. That's not life. Life is full of disappointment and betrayal and hurt feelings and regret, as well as love and unconditional, even though the love is unconditional. As humans, we don't always live up to that. We make mistakes. And then we have to ask for forgiveness and we have to repent and all of that stuff. And the music somehow expresses that in its own way.
All right, well, let's hear the song Jude and I right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.
Once upon a time, a stork swooped down from the sky, revealed when he brought Jude secrets that I never knew. I smiled, a blessing in my life. I cried, tears of joy for Jude and I. Is quite confused. A parent's love divides by 2, yields greater than the half. Can a baby boy who loves to laugh retain the words her father says? Should I just wrap him in my arms instead? Coming soon to bring me back. your mother's fears, a love she can't contain. Embrace her and appreciate what I will teach you all I can. Think me a hero, but I'm just a man. When life puts up a fight, stand tall and you'll prevail despite the strength that you may lack. If your brother has your back, as one to face a burning flame. Be brave, be always loyal to your name. Jude, know that I believe in you. And you, when you're not sure what to do, hang on, the plane is coming soon to bring me back to you. And I will carry you, my son, my son. Tears of joy for Jude and I. Tears of joy for Jude and I. Tears of joy for Jude and I.
We're back at the Two Cat Kitchen, and every episode of the Two Cat Kitchen includes a recipe. George, do you have something for us today?
Well, Rick, look, I'm not as elaborate as some of your other guests with their culinary wizardry. But one thing that I do take pride in, which I take pride in the kitchen, is making sorbet, and something that I've enjoyed and I would say quasi perfected over the years. So I'm going to give away my big secret here. Basically, I'm talking about the stuff you can do with a $100 Cuisinart ice cream maker that you can buy at Bed Bath and Beyond, or I mean, it's this is not high end equipment. It's a small unit that's maybe one cubic foot.
Okay.
So it doesn't take up a lot of space.
Countertop.
What's that?
Countertop unit.
Yeah, it's a countertop thing. But that's the trick, actually, is that I don't actually use it on the countertop. So what I found is, these days it's amazing how the tools we have on the internet to do research. Sorbet, I mean, not in the context of gelato or other things which have milk. I mean, the kind of sorbet that I do is just basically fruit and sugar. Those are the only two ingredients. Fruit puree with sugar. And the point of putting the sugar is not, and this goes back to my first degree was in chemical engineering, so I got a little bit into the science of it. You don't add the sugar to make it sweeter. I mean, the fruit is already sweet enough. You add the sugar because it changes the freezing point of the mixture. And so that's how you end up with the kind of the texture of ice cream. Because otherwise you could just take juice and freeze it like those, like our moms used to do, making those popsicles where they just pour like Kool-Aid or whatever into those little plastic things and put them in the freezer, and then you would suck on it in the summer because it was just basically frozen juice. That's not really what sorbet is.
Oh, okay.
So what I found is that, and this, by the way, varies by country, but in the U.S., with the kind of sugar that we have here, I'm talking about just white sugar that you buy in the supermarket, the ratio is 4-1. So 4 parts, or say 4 cups of fruit puree to 1 cup of sugar. So what you basically want to do is just puree the fruit, and of course the more fleshy fruits like berries, like strawberry, for example, works really, really well. Raspberry works really, really well. Mango works really well because it's thick and it's very fleshy, not thin juice coming out of it, because then you have to get into using syrup and stuff like that. So if you take something like strawberries, take 4 cups of pureed strawberries, add a cup of sugar to it, put it in your blender and mix it really well, and then put the blender in the fridge to get it close to, as cold as possible. Okay. And then when you're ready to actually do the churning of the machine, it takes about 45 minutes. What I found is, again, doing the research, that the colder the ambient temperature is, the smaller the ice crystals that will form as the machine is turning, and that solution gets frozen. And the smaller the ice crystals are, the creamier it is. So what I figured out was if you can, clear out space in your freezer, enough to fit that countertop unit inside the freezer and just have the cord of the thing hanging outside the door, okay?
Oh, wow.
You put it inside the freezer so that it's not losing any heat to the ambient temperature of the kitchen. It's just going to be like room temperature, right?
Wow,
You're
yeah.
losing heat there to the room. When it's inside the freezer, you're not losing any heat. It's staying at a frozen temperature in there. And that enables it to be even creamier. So when it's done churning, you take it out, and when you remove that, you put it in a container or whatever, a 1 liter container or whatever it is that you're gonna, because that unit doesn't hold much more than 1 liter, but it's basically like a pint or a couple pints, probably 2 pints of ice cream, something like that. You're gonna put that back in the freezer, and you'll find that when it refreezes, it's creamy like ice cream. And people have a hard time even believing that. How can this just be fruit and sugar? It's not. Doesn't have that frozen fruit kind of feel to it. It feels very creamy. So that's my big trick when it comes to sorbet. Get the right ratio: 4 parts puree to 1 part sugar, and if it's possible, do the actual churning of the ice cream making or the sorbet making inside the freezer itself, where you have a colder ambient temperature.
Wow, that's a super pro tip right there.
Yeah.
So the ice cream maker actually works in the freezer? It's not too cold in there?
I probably want to leave it in there 24 hours a day, but putting it in 45 minutes is not, hasn't harmed it. And I've been doing this for years, so
okay.
It seems to be okay.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So there you have it. And and you said that, so you want to do this, you want to use fresh fruit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to use juice or anything like that. The best results are, again, when you eat it, you get the feeling that you're eating fruit. I mean, I've done it with pears, I've done it with apricots, peaches, any kind of fleshy fruit. And if you get sometimes you find fruit that's just about, I don't want to say rotten, but overripe. And sometimes in the supermarket they have that. If you go to a fresh market or something, or a fruit or a farmer's stand or something like that, they're practically giving it away because it's about to go bad. That actually ends up being some of the best fruit to use because it's super juicy. Like sometimes you take plums, you want them so ripe that when you pinch it, it's like the juice starts squirting out of the plum. And that's one of my favorite fruits to use, is that you use, like in the heart of the summer, you take those plums, remove the skin from the plums, and then get all the flesh out of there, puree that, and then put it in. And then just at the end, about 5 minutes before you're going to stop churning, you will have diced up all the skins of the plums, and then you mix that in, garnishing like you would do with like chocolate chip ice cream or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And those skins of the plums end up getting scattered around the sorbet, so you end up with a sweet and sour kind of a thing because the skins have a sour taste to them. And the flesh of the fruit and the sugar mixture is very sweet. So that's a really nice treat to do a fruit like plums where you get a sweet and sour texture to it, sweet and sour flavor to it.
Wow, that sounds fantastic.
It's really good.
Plum sorbet, homemade.
Yeah.
Right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.
Yep.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, George.
My pleasure, Rick.
And thanks for being a guest on the Two Cat Kitchen. It's been great talking with you and a real pleasure having you on the show. We'll have a link in the show notes where people can head on over and learn more about the agency and find more of your songs. That's all we have time for in this episode of the Two Cat Kitchen.
We'd like to thank our guest, George Ajjan. You can find more of George's music on theajjancy.com. That's the AJJANCY.com.
I'm Rick McKinney.
And I'm Sarah Grady. Be sure to join us next time, right here on the Two Cat Kitchen.